Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 10th of October, comes to you from London. The dollar just sinking lower overnight, so we are just seeing it turning a little bit bearish here on the short-term chart. We do have a downside target some 4% lower, but it's a lone target. So at the moment, dollar is softening, but medium term still holding its bullish trend, and long term still making that transition. Against the euro, we're seeing euro up this morning on that weaker dollar, but still bearish on the medium-term chart. Japanese yen, we see the dollar has been deteriorating here for nearly a week. So it normally shows up against the yen first, any sign of dollar weakness. Sterling pushing higher against the dollar this morning, that weaker dollar helping, and on the cusp of making a transition into bullish on the medium term chart. And the same with the euro. We're seeing here sterling actually has made that transition and has the upper hand. So sterling looking stronger all the time. Against the Swiss franc, also looking stronger, and against the Aussie dollar, also looking stronger. Bitcoin sinking lower, bearish short term again. And last night we saw markets in the US having the jitters. We saw really up and down sort of seesaw on the markets. There's quite a bit of fear there, and that's showing through on the charts. NASDAQ short term bearish, just holding support on the cloud here, but short-term bearish, no clear downside target. So for the moment, we have to really look at the very short-term charts, the 1 minute. The Dow Jones does have a downside target, so I'm 2.6% lower, and we are bearish below the cloud here, and it's really showing up the bearishness in the Russell 2000, which is now turned medium-term bearish. The futures this morning, little change, so no real heads up as to which way the US will open. The S&P futures is up 0.01%. The Nasdaq E-mini up by a similar amount, but these futures are looking bearish. The FTSE 100 down this morning very slightly. We'll look at the stocks in a minute, but really making several multi-month lows here, so that's pretty bearish in the market, and the long-term chart now coming under pressure. Looking at the FTSE 250, we see here a pretty bearish picture as well. The DAX, looking this morning at the DAX, we're seeing here still looking pretty bearish as well, and the medium-term chart is again testing new lows, as is the CAC Quarant, not looking as bad as the DAX, but still looking pretty bearish. Japan overnight is very little change, but again we're in bearish territory short term, and the Hang Seng did have a little bit of a bounce, but again looking pretty bearish short term, and this long term chart starting to come under pressure. And the local Chinese market, the Shanghai Composite, up slightly, but really struggling to recover here, and really on the cusp of testing multi-year lows. So that would be still a big worry for Shanghai if we fall through and activate this downside target some 47% lower. The Indian market actually recovered somewhat overnight, but still looking pretty bearish on the charts. And the Aussie market was up very slightly as well. Brent crude sitting around this $85 level. Looks like we're about to come back into bullish territory, but for the moment we're just in this neutral phase. Long and medium term looking still pretty bullish. WTI again just starting to wander through the cloud as well. US NatGas looking stronger all the time. 331. We had these targets here, 331, 332, and we've met those targets. The next upside target is 348. That's not yet activated. We've got one here at 347 and 375. So US NatGas looking pretty strong, and the hurricane in the Gulf at the moment starting to affect prices a little bit there as well, with oil production shut off. Gold still bearish below the cloud, and we've got quite a lot of downside targets on gold. So it looks like we'll fall to around the 1170s. So at the moment, gold is short-term bearish, medium-term bearish, and long-term bearish. So the key thing is making sure we don't make a new low here. If we make a new low, that will activate quite a big downside target. Silver also just bearish on the short-term chart. US 10-year yield still looking pretty bullish, sitting at 3.21%, and German bonds, having had lows at the start of the week, have recovered a little bit, but again, bond prices across Europe looking pretty bearish. Taking a look at the stocks, We had Apple actually up yesterday, so looking stronger there. Uh, Most stocks actually opened lower, but then recovered. Amazon also recovering some poise, so looking strong there. It's partly about quality. If we look at Google, Google not looking as good and starting to look a little bit worrying on this medium-term chart. In terms of the performances, Tesla was the top performer, up some 4.8%. Just holding this 250 level for Tesla is absolutely critical, but we do have these downside targets as low as 207, 201. So Tesla still looking a little bit worrying. Taking a look at the worst performers, American Airlines consistently a bad performer, making new multi-year lows, 2-year lows. So looking pretty worrying there, down some 6%. Seagate down 4%. And Liberty Global down 3%. So we saw some pretty big falls, and quite a mixed picture across the board. Taking a look at the FTSE 100 this morning, we see here quite a lot of red on the screen. So red outweighing the green. The best performer is Ocado at the moment, although it's had a terrible time of recent weeks, and still bearish below the cloud. Ocado there, Just Eat has been another poor performer of late, up this morning, but the trend is down. Sage, of course, also has been a pretty poor performer, recovering a little bit this morning. And then the sell-off we're seeing here, DS Smith down some 4% this morning. Royal Mail, its woes continuing, and down a further 3.7%. So we are seeing quite a mixed picture across the board. Burberry lower, and airlines still looking to struggle. So that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.